Thank you very much. A big hand for all our speakers this morning. Thank you very much for your insightful remarks. And now we move to our next session, the panels. So our first panel session is the session on promoting Africa's special economic zones, a journey towards green growth and innovation. Our esteemed panelists will discuss strategies for enhancing investment, building local capabilities, and creating sustainable jobs in Africa's renewable energy sector. This session will be moderated by Mr. Yofi Grant, the CEO of Ghana Investment Promotion Center. Please join me in welcoming our moderator and our panelists, Ms. Oluranti Doherty, Managing Director, Export Development at Afreximbank. Mr. Hao Ren, Group Senior VP and Global COO of NWTN. Mr. Nassim Oulmane, Acting Director, Climate, Food, Security and Natural Resources Division, UN Economic Commission for Africa, and Mr. Tijani Nwadei, Partner and Co-Founder of Vsauce. Let's give him a warm hand.
First of all, thank you for your country. I hope we are all awake. After many speeches, people sometimes drift off. So to show that we're all awake, please wave your right hand. I'm not seeing many hands. Please. Okay. I think I have a very interesting percent under the age of 35. A huge youth dividend, which is a major consuming class for the future. Last but not the least, 65% of the world's remaining arable land left in the world is on the African continent. So that makes the African continent extremely important in the global dynamic. But as a continent that offers such great opportunity, isn't it amazing that despite all these, every year, or at least in the last year, Africa's share of global FDI, which the Secretary General just mentioned is critical for sustainable trade, is only 3%. It tells us there's something amiss. So today, to help us answer some of these very important questions and, filter through why we are where we are and what can overcome these barriers that we haven't yet discussed, I have 4 very interesting panelists, and I've mentioned their names, not in order of which they are sitting, but as they speak, we have Ms. Oluranti Doherty, Managing Director, Export Development at Afreximbank. Next to her, we have Mr. Hao Ren. He's a Group Senior VP and Global CEO of NWTN, which is a NASDAQ-quoted company. And then, of course, we have Mr. Nassim Oulmane, Acting Director, Climate, Food Security and Natural Resources Division of the UNECA, UNECA, as we call them. And then last but not the least, an accomplished entrepreneur, Mr. Tijani Nwadei, the partner and co-founder of, I always struggle to pronounce your company, is it Vsauce or Vsauce?
Vsauce, like tomato sauce.
So there we are. So this afternoon, I have for you some provocative questions. And I'll start perhaps with Mr. Nwadei, only because he's an entrepreneur who has risked his capital on the continent and is doing some amazing things in the green space. So Tijani, the first question, and I have 2 rounds of questions, is seeing that most African countries have government as a very large part of their economies and are politically set up to have huge concentrations of power at the center. What role do you think state governments play or should play in the promotion and the development of special economic zones as a vehicle to mobilizing green finance to the continent?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much, Afrexim and the Dubai Consulting Group for putting this together. Thank you very much, Baku. Thank you for the. It's very interesting. So I find that with people in this room, people from the banking sector, people from NASDAQ, think tanks, and those policymakers, their mandates and their drive is usually at variance with that of governments, whereas governments shoulders the burden of the policy that allows them operate. So I think with regards to Africa and regards to the government in Africa, the real role they play is around policy. Now, not policy in the same way that the people in this room will do policy, but policy in a way that allows the people in this room execute in their country. Government has the burden of the biggest infrastructure budget of any country. So by putting the policies in place that allow people in this room, your Afreximbanks, your private sector invest, it eases the way in which they do what they need to do. And the policy doesn't have to be grand. It can even be as small as electricity policy that allows special economic zones work. It can be transport policy that requires that government do a single road to promote exports. We've seen something in Ethiopia recently, the Hawassa Industrial Park, where they used a single policy that ensured that there was no liquid water discharge. It was reused in their process. That is green. That is impressive. And it was simply a line by government that ensured that that worked. So for government, I think it's simply policy and data. And with that, the rest follows. Thank you.
Okay, just one quick question after that. And it's a yes or no answer. Do you think African governments are doing enough to align SEZs in a way that they have sustainable trade and sustainable finance?
I think another way of looking at it is, do governments in Africa understand the alignment between SEZs and their political capital?
Right.
So you see, the people in this room trade in returns, whether it is financial returns or policy returns. African governments trade in political capital. So have they been sufficiently informed on the alignment of their political capital with the effective operations of SEZs? And I think the answer is no, but therein lies the opportunity. Like you said, you listed out a long list of potentials. All that potential is simply waiting for an alignment, and then there will be takeoff.
Thank you very much. Interesting answers. So I come to you, Nassim, because you work with UNECA. From UNECA's perspective, how do special economic zones align with Africa's broader climate and sustainability development goals, particularly in terms of fostering green technologies and reducing carbon emissions? And what policy frameworks of international partnerships are needed to support this alignment? And the last question I'm asking, because of what Tijani just said, that, there are different directions, but is it possible that international partnerships can be a solution to getting the SEZs to align?
Thank you very much, Yofi, for the question. I would like first to thank the organizers, DCG, UAE Trade Center, and Afreximbank for the invitation. And as you have highlighted it in your introductory remarks, I mean, maybe Africa is the only continent who is facing two major challenges. I mean, the climate change challenge, but also challenges related to the demographic dynamics. It has a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities, but also challenges. So, special economic zones, we see it from as zones that could play a crucial role in aligning Africa economic growth, because we need growth. Why we are 1.4 billion, moving to 2.6 billion, with its climate and sustainable development objectives. So, special economic zones are positioned to foster green technologies, very important, and to reduce carbon emissions by providing dedicated spaces where renewable energies, infrastructures, sustainable manufacturing, all these are related also to SDGs, and most than anything, innovation in clean technologies. This is really the priority. So how we align all these, and we see SEZs really as a tool to maximize this alignment. How you achieve this to, I would say, a policy framework that has several dimensions. First dimension, really create incentives, tax, or supporting industries. So having policies that will incentivize green investments, such as tax breaks for renewable energy projects, etc., to really having sustainable infrastructure standards. So standardization is crucial, particularly to respond to your point where, and as it has been highlighted by the first intervener, on how we can achieve this at the continental level in a coherent way. Mang'eni highlighted the potential that we have with the AFCFTA. So really the coherence of the approach across the continent is also fundamental. And finally, and most important also than ever, because it's related to innovation, skills. So skills development, knowledge sharing between the different part of the continent, between the different SEZs. And the example, and it has been given by in her introduction by Ms. Kanyana Awani on the DRC Zambia Special Economic Zone, really bringing all this together to bringing countries to develop together special economic zones is also very important. Why? Because we need to recognize in our continent that we have several countries that are suffering from the size. So building together SEZs to make the most from the African regional AFCFTA, developing regional value chains, is really an important point. So let's see how we can make sure that our countries, they of course develop SEZs, but also they see how together they can develop this SEZ. I will stop there.
Thank you. Interesting. So I come to you, Oluranti, because you have been thrown a challenge, in a backwards way. So in your opinion, since you're running export development at the AFDB, Afrexim, same difference. How can Africa actually develop sustainable manufacturing? You've had policy challenges, you've had divergent policies. How can Africa develop sustainable manufacturing capacities using the special economic zones, recognizing the challenges that have just been mentioned? What specific policies do you think governments should be adopting? What incentive structures should they be looking at, especially at this time when government revenues have all been shrunken on the continent? And what measures do you think they need to use to attract investment? And you heard the Secretary General say investment. And how do we promote sustainable industrialization?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with you all, and a pleasure to speak on something that I'm very passionate about. And we're talking about special economic zones. At Afreximbank, we believe that special economic zones are really innovative tools that the continent can use to expedite sustainable manufacturing capacities. We've had all speakers mentioned today, from my Executive Vice President, Mrs. Awani, the SG Mang'eni, that Africa is a continent that is rich in various resources. You yourself, Moderator, you alluded to that. However, very little transformation goes on the continent. And this is because of the challenges we face in terms of infrastructure, in terms of trade-enabling infrastructure that even moves these goods, in terms of energy deficiency, etc. So we believe that establishing special economic zones can help reverse this trend. What do special economic zones do? Essentially, they are clusters where you promote transformation They are an integrated ecosystem, and they ensure a plug and play for manufacturers. And for us at Afreximbank, we've been pushing setting up industrialized parks and special economic zones under our 6th strategic plan in support of our 2 key core pillars, the pillar promoting intra-African trade and facilitating the implementation of AFCFTA, as well as the industrialization and export development pillar. And up to date, Afreximbank has been able to approve over 2.4 billion in financing to support the development of industrial parks. Of this, about 1.4 billion has actually been disbursed to facilitate inside the fence and outside the fence infrastructure in operational industrial parks in Gabon, in Benin, in Togo, and in Chad. Whilst we are currently advancing pipeline deals of over 2 billion to support the development of industrial parks in Cote d'Ivoire, Malawi, Botswana, Kenya, DRC, Zambia, Rwanda, and Nigeria. Why are we doing this? We want to foster a very swift transformation of the continent. And in the industrial parks that I've just mentioned to you that we financed in Gabon, in Togo, in Benin, and in Chad, we are already pushing and driving into African trade. I'll give you an example. The industrial park in Gabon produces wood products, and the industrial park in Chad produces meat products. Between these 2 countries, we have been seeing an export of wood that is deficient in Chad to Chad, and an importation of meat from Chad to Gabon. Whereas before, Gabon was importing meat from South America. So these are some of the changes we've made. But what do we think is required from governments to ensure that special economic zones become an attractive destination for investors that are here with us today? I see a lot of Azerbaijani investors and also people from everywhere in the world. We invite you to come to Africa and invest in our special economic zones. And some of the things we've done with our member countries in some of our operational economic zones is that we've ensured that they've put in place appropriate tax incentives and benefits, tax holidays of 10 years and above to attract investors like yourselves. We've also worked with them to ensure that they streamline regulatory processes so that when you want to set up your companies in those companies, it's streamlined. It's a one-stop shop. You don't go from one place to the other for days and months. This process is streamlined. Another thing that our special economic zones have done to be attractive is to ensure that operating cost is kept minimal. How do they do this? They have created an integrated ecosystem to bring the raw materials required for production to these zones. They have also created an integrated ecosystem to get finished goods out of these industrial parks to destination markets across the world. Another thing that we've done very well in the industrial parks and special economic zones that we finance as an institution is we've ensured the creation of vocational training centers to train skilled workforce. So Africa has a teeming youth population, and this is some of the things we are harnessing and utilizing within these industrial parks. We ensure that the operational industrial parks in Gabon, Benin, Togo, and Chad host vocational training centers to train the youth to be able to work in these industrial parks. Another thing we've been able to do is to ensure market access and trade facilitation. And this is one of the things I'm doing as I am sitting on this panel. I'm talking to you about these operational industrial parks in Gabon, in Benin, in Togo, and I'm inviting you to come with us to be able to set up your factories, your companies in these industrial parks. You have access to raw materials, you have better labor costs, you have infrastructure, you have access to destination markets. And the last thing is we've worked with these countries to make them see that their role in the development of industrial parks goes beyond just providing land and incentives, but joining in investment and export promotion and marketing. As Afreximbank, we don't just do financing. We do finance, we do advisory, we do advocacy, and we do investment promotion and market access for most of these projects that we support. Thank you.
Fantastic. So you know where to go when you're looking for a partner that's continent-wide. But how? You run a company that has globally done stuff. I mean, it's done stuff globally, and very well too. You are quoted on the NASDAQ. It means you must be a heavyweight. And you've been at the forefront of green technologies and innovation in many markets. What do you think, in your view, is the problem that Africa will face in trying to attract green finance or trying to develop green technologies on the continent? And do you think the special economic zones that she's very well expressed are a one-stop shop to support some of these developments? And then, of course, do you think the continent itself, with all the challenges it has, should be looking at green finance or be looking at solving its fundamental problems? Or is there a connection between the fundamental problems and green finance? I know it's a difficult question. It's like back to school, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think when you start this panel, all your comments sounds very familiar to me and sounds very exciting, okay? It just reminds me of China about 30 to 40 years ago, okay? We lack of infrastructure, we lack of market, we lack of GDP in China. Everybody is riding a bicycle instead of automotive. Everybody is, the net income is at hundreds of US dollars instead of over 10,000 now. And the government determined to develop those special economic zone in China, very similar approach as what Africa is doing today, okay? Even with all those challenges, we don't have work skills, we don't have workforce, we don't have income, we don't have the customer base or purchasing power. Nonetheless, when the government give all these incentives through the policies, the whole set of policies to advocate the economic growth, to set up special zones, these special economic zones with the incentives to attract foreign investment, to attract the foreign technologies, and also work with the local partners in the continent, not only just taking what's already existing there, put into Africa, rather you can use in those technology base to develop some products and service tailor-made for the continents, for the customer, for the people in Africa, which will help the economy to grow that unprecedentedly that you would think about it. Okay, I had a very interesting discussion before the lunch with the Africa Import and Export Bank, and we're talking about, my years back 30 years ago, when General Motors go into China and trying to set up joint venture, and we're looking at the market. To a certain extent, we found that the automobiles in US does not fit all the needs in China. Okay, you bring a Cadillac, you bring a Buick, you bring a Chevrolet, but still there's a large portion of the customer base or the price range you never covered. So we work with a very interesting local partner called Oulmane. If anybody knows that Oulmane used to be, they're like roll off every vehicle in 5 seconds, and they are building like 2 million units a year. We never expect that, okay? When we have a joint venture between General Motors and Shanghai Auto and the local partner in one of the rural area in China called Guangxi, and it's a city called Liuzhou, they only produced 100,000 units a year. And in 20 years, that company grows 20 times from 100,000 to a 2 million units a year annual output. That's very amazing. Okay, you never thought about when you start your business case, okay, the P&L analysis, your return on investment, you never thought about it. Okay, it is all these policies that government promote the industry and all these incentives you give into on the tax reduction, tax rebate, you're supporting with the skilled workforce education of the whole university systems to push the automotive industry developed. And also, I think for the special economic zone, not only the car, the car itself is a huge revenue, but however, the value chain of the whole automotive industry will bring you components, and bring you all these new technologies that will help you to overcome those challenges you mentioned. For example, we're talking about like for the electric vehicle. Today, there's no infrastructure of charging. Okay, the power grid has not expanded to every corner that you can do, but technology is there. I used to run a startup in China, which has a charging pile technology together developed with Volkswagen. It's a power. It's a combination of a power bank with batteries and the fast charging guns. So when you have batteries, you don't need a big transformer, big cables from the power grid. You can charge these batteries at a normal rate, and then these mobile systems can be put inside all the rural areas and providing fast charging service to all the electrical vehicles. So technology will enable you to overcome some of the challenges. The same for Africa is, I think, by government, by the special economic zone, by those enterprises all together, we bring all these new technologies, new companies, and all these new products into the continent, and the whole value chain will help the economy to grow. So don't worry about too much. We've seen that 40 years ago in China, and everybody knows where China is today. So I believe in Africa, there's great potential.
Okay, great. So let's do another round of questions quickly. And I'll start with you, Haren. And I'll ask you a simple question.
Okay.
So if you look at the needs of the African continent today, you've seen China, you were a startup, you ran a startup yourself. Where do you think are the most attractive places for innovation and green technologies and the investment in green technologies and innovation on the African continent?
You're talking about the specific geographic location, or you're talking about the products or technologies? Technologies?
Either way you can answer, because either way works. Both, yeah.
Both, yeah. I think, we have population, we have the market potential, we have young generations, and new cars, new energies, green technology, green energy. Those are the way to go. China used to be, overwhelmed by the oil consumption because of the whole country's consumption. But today we're transforming to more clean, more sustainable green energies. And I think that's the same thing every continent, Europe, US, China. Now Africa should get all the lessons, and we go directly to the green products, green technologies.
Okay, great. So, Tijan, you just heard him. Is that where you put your money?
For me?
No, him. He has a fund. Yeah. So I'm asking, is that where you put your money?
Well, so generally, I think that the advantage of being in a disadvantaged position is that you get to be a market disruptor, right? So I think things like transportation, absolutely. I would not touch agriculture, because I think when you are blessed with so much arable land, there is less of an incentive for you to disrupt when it comes to agriculture. But anything that makes life easy, transportation, tech, even the way we handle waste tech, waste management, a lot of cities in Africa were not properly planned. So the planning came afterwards. So I think that there is a lot of disruption that can go in how you manage waste in a green and sustainable way. So yeah, I agree with you. But again, as an entrepreneur, disruption on the continent to catch up is where I'm putting my money.
Well, it's estimated that for AfCFTA to be functionally dynamic, Africa requires 2 million trucks. Will you invest in that?
So again, disruption. So AfCFTA assumes that we need to move things on the road. But today they are telling you that China is overtaking the US with taxis. Like, we don't have any ocean marine movement on the continent. See, if you tell me today, put methanol ships. So if I can get methanol cheap from the available gas on the continent, I will disrupt that way before I disrupt with trucks. You see, with trucks, I need too many people to agree to build a road. But I don't need anybody to agree to build the ocean.
Interesting. That's a very good answer. So I come to you. What would you advise governments to do in the light of what he's just said and what Mr. Ren just said? Because you engage government.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, it's related to what you have described perfectly. It's the demographic dynamics and having the inclusivity. It's, of course, from the UN, so it's a word that we push. But in the case of Africa, it's even more important than in the rest of the continent. So having a really local approach and to involve the local communities, find ways to innovate, have local innovations, etc. So this is really crucial when we speak about special economic zones, to make sure that the local communities around these zones are involved. How? We'd really give preference to local content policies, giving preferences to the communities, to the local suppliers. Easy to do. Building the skills around I was quoting the DRC Zambia special economic zone that we are working with Afreximbank on that. Really, the skills dimension is crucial. With the local universities to develop the local skills to do it. Innovation hub and incubators, really to setting up green technologies. You need incubators around this within the special economic zones and around. So to encourage the local innovation. And then making sure that the local communities are fully involved, fully engaged in the planning from the first stage when you start to plan, to really have the local communities involved in that stage. As ECA, as a regional commission, what is our role there, of course, is to work with the right partners to accelerate, is also to share knowledge from a region to another region, really hold, particularly on this issue of the local communities, really how to share quickly, but of course, to adapt to the singularity of a specific sub-region or country, or when two countries are working. And last but not least, work with the Pan-African institutions on the continental harmonization, so to make sure that the scale issue is also taken into account. So whatever you invest in that specific area with the specific local communities, you had at the end of the day as a target the continental market.
Okay, so we are almost wrapping up. I have one last question, which of course I'll direct to our only lady on the panel. So you've heard the three men speak. So as I would call you a development finance institution, would you rather put money in the likes of Tijani, or would you direct money to the many SMEs and SMIs who are in this space? And which do you think would be the faster route for Africa to grow?
Oh, it's back. Yeah, I think it's back. So for me, I think none is exclusive. I would invest in Tijan. I will also invest in the SMEs. Because you need to do both. Because where we are, we need to scale up and scale up fast. So you cannot afford to exclude one group at the expense of the other. But then you asked me a question, what is my role as a DFI? You see, I believe that African DFIs, we need to wear a different cap. We need to see ourselves beyond financing. And that is one good thing my organization has done. We don't see ourselves as a bank or banker or providing financing. We see ourselves as wearing multiple hats. Ourselves as an advocate. Thank you. Yeah. So we see ourselves as an advocate for our member countries. We see ourselves as an advisor to our member countries, so we provide advisory services. We see ourselves as developers. So you see us in some instance playing the role of project developers, and that's what we're doing in partnership with UNECA on the DRC Zambia Special Economic Zone project. We see ourselves as being catalytic, providing project preparation financing to project sponsors to be able to come up with bankable projects to attract debt and equity. We see ourselves as conveners. We convene people together. We bring the government, we bring the private sector, we bring international stakeholders, and we let each party play the best role they are most suited for. Just to conclude, we see ourselves as innovators. We definitely always come up with financing solutions. And one of these was alluded to by my executive vice president when she was talking about the Afreximbank guarantees product, which is available to you investors in the room today, thinking and pondering about how to invest in Africa and how to safeguard your investments. We have a suite of guarantee programs that we can offer to you to safeguard your investment. Either it's sovereign investment guarantee or it's investment guarantee tailored to transactions, credit risk investment guarantees. We have this product at your disposal to attract investments. And then finally, I would say we see ourselves as the bridge between the continent and the rest of the world. And we have created multiple platforms, be it our facilitation programs, be it the brick and mortar infrastructure we've created by financing development of special economic zones to attract you to the continent and everything to make sure that Africa remains on your mind as a viable investment destination, and we will help you clear away the perceived risk of investment onto the continent. My colleague is going to come on later and showcase to you some of the special economic zones we've developed in partnership with our strategic partner, Arise IIP, and we invite you to take a listen to that and consider bringing your investments to the continent. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, panel. I think that we have done great justice to the issues at stake. We wish we had more time to entertain questions, but unfortunately, we are an hour late, aren't we? And our beautiful MC wants us to sit down so that she can do the talking. So thank you very much. And I think we'll do the picture thing. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Photographer, please take a picture of the panelists. Can we give a round of applause to panel one for a very insightful discussion as they're taking the picture?